Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Neurominds podcast. Today, I have the honor to have Wolfgang with me. He's actually from the same federal state as me in Germany, but maybe you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Wolfgang. I'm 45. I was pretty recently diagnosed within the last 2.5 years with ADHD first and then autism. I worked after studying business administration. I worked in the corporate field for about almost 10 years. And after taking a trip around the world at the age of 30, I started basically building businesses. First, my own self-funded business. Then I became a consultant on top of that because I wasn't making enough money with the business at first, which led me to building a pretty large company with two others. And yeah, I've been doing that for the last 14, 15 years now. Yeah, took quite the turn everything when I realized pretty much when I hit 40 that life just couldn't continue as it was going. Something was changing in me, and that kind of led me eventually to basically inquire deeply and get a diagnosis. Yeah, that's basically the background, more or less.
And what was from a corporate experience perspective, the, let's say, most challenging part for you?
The social part, the dynamics, as in I would say the power dynamics, because most people actually, my impression at least, aim to climb up the ladder. So there's a lot of elbows, and if I'm one thing not is an elbow person. So I really try to focus on the goal and the objectives and work as a team to achieve it, but really as an actual team, with a heartfelt meaning of this is meant to be a team and I'm going to contribute for this to work. But I experience a lot of people being more interested in their own development or in their own advancing their careers, that I found extremely challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that very well. I mean, neurodivergents usually have quite altruistic minds. They want to achieve something together, getting everyone on board. And I also felt that in a lot of companies, it's like a shark tank.
Absolutely.
It's sharpening your resilience, but at the end of the day, you just want to have good humans around you. Just
Very much
doing
so.
your job very well, being a high performer, having good humans, and yeah, just going for it, right?
Very much so.
I'm trying to catch my thought again that I had like 2 minutes ago. I think that when we talk about climbing up the ladder, I always had some sort of like internally the feeling that a hamster wheel from the inside also looks like a corporate ladder, right? So at some point, like, what is the goal, or what is it that you're passionate about that you would like to achieve also for yourself in life? And I think that Gen Z, for example, at the moment, they're focusing like sharply on what is my purpose, but what is it that I can also contribute in terms of impact, right? So this will become more and more important, I see, in that landscape. And yeah, let's see how it continues. But there's a huge shift going on in companies, and I think also corporates especially, they have to actually change a little bit the setup and the systemic landscapes to actually accommodate that in the future, right?
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I experienced especially that also, that I was pretty much the youngest in that whole area in which I worked. I worked at Siemens at the time. That was my first job. And that gap in age and understanding of, how to work was significantly different. So I really feel that exactly what you're saying now has, taken more, how do you say, there's more force behind it because more of masses are kind of going in that direction. And I think now companies are forced to adapt. Whereas at the time, it felt like I had to adapt to this very old school corporate environment. And I found that extremely hard because it had no meaning, no purpose. And it was basically, as you say, a shark tank, right? And that for me just doesn't work. And then I cannot maintain that level of energy and investment it just doesn't function. And then the issue is that you're seen for your talents, but you're not seen for the price that you pay, right, to make it work. And that eventually also led me out of that direction, right? I couldn't do it. I mean, I could do it, and I was seen, and I had a protege who really was the COO of that division of Siemens in Munich. But you can have all the offer and proteges in the world. If you can't pay that price, then it just doesn't function.
Yeah, price is too high.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I left after, what was it, like 4 years? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, I feel like also within myself, I feel like I don't want to work in environments anymore where your instincts, your intuition and everything is just being suppressed. I had many situations, and probably you too, where I had a certain gut feeling based on different data points that I collected in order to take a strategic decision or whatever. But then it was like, okay, how do you justify your decision? And I'm like, it's based on my gut because I feel that this is the right decision. And then you get so much headwind from others saying like, but it should be more evidence-based and we need more numbers on paper and blah. Which is also like contradictory because neurodivergence, we don't need everything black and white on paper to understand.
Absolutely.
We have pattern recognition, so we can put the pieces together, which is also hard for others to understand, which makes it also very difficult to work with each other, right? In these short times.
And I have a very good example in that context of Siemens, which completely seconds your thought or what you just said, is I was working in the headquarters, obviously, in Munich, and we worked primarily with the Americans and the Chinese. And with the Chinese, I always heard my colleagues how they talked with the Chinese and how they interacted and when they came to visit, when we went there. So I was like, this isn't going to go anywhere. Like I could feel that there was going to be a conflict of let's say, of a higher magnitude. And I wasn't believed. I said to my boss at the time, I said, there's going to be a bomb that's going to explode. But I was not believed, right? So, and what was it? I don't know. 2 months later, it completely exploded in the sense that the Chinese just, how do you say, skipped a certain, that was called the order management in the company. And they went around because they didn't want to be in contact with the order management anymore. So they basically created a workaround process that only came to the surface a couple weeks later, that they had started not cooperating with the headquarters in the order management where they were supposed to have their contact point anymore. And that created a massive, that was like a scandal basically. And there was such a disruption following that. And the trust was lost and everything had to be redone and nobody wanted to believe me at the time. And then that was the first time I experienced myself really pretty much after I started, maybe a couple months into the job where I realized this is going to happen, and it happened. And I eventually tried to, because I realized more and more of this pattern recognition and in the context of working, that eventually led me to company building, right? Because in corporate, you're not heard, right? You're not seen then for that. That's not what anybody wants to hear, is that you have a gut feeling about something and it actually happens. So I was looked at being, I don't know, it wasn't necessarily the talent that I was seen for, but then in company building, that's exactly what you need. You need to be able to anticipate the future.
Yes.
And so, I basically made a career out of it. So I transitioned out of, let's say, traditional corporate, Siemens, etc., into a family-run business that was expanding in Eastern Europe. Peek and Kloppenburg, which you probably also know. And this massive expansion was basically something like a startup, right? To create this new headquarters in Vienna for that expansion. And that also then worked really, really well because there I was more allowed to live and execute on this pattern recognition and this ability to anticipate. And funny enough is that I also have that when it comes to numbers. I can literally anticipate and then build a whole business case around it. There's also a lot of things I don't know how to do, but I'm really good at anticipating the future, including the numbers, right? So anyways, so that's kind of why I went out of that field based on the specific, I would say, neurodivergent talents. Combined with a neurodivergent, at least from my part, the challenges that I at the time didn't really understand fully yet, but they did have a very strong impact in terms of my career development.
It's interesting.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I just wanted to say that most neurodivergents I speak with, they had exactly the same experience, and I had that so many times as well, that in companies I knew already something is going to shit in the next 3 to 6 months or whatever, because I just feel it. And the moment that you're not believed, or that people are calling you like even sometimes liar and stuff, I'm like, oh my God. And then they see these things going to shit, but no one is getting back to you saying like, hey, actually you've been right.
Yeah.
That never happens, of course. But yeah, that's more, let's say, ego-driven businesses.
Yeah.
But no, it's a fascinating challenge that neurodivergents face in workplaces. And yeah, that's why we're doing this. That's why we're raising awareness and hopefully creating workplaces that serve everyone. And we're also company owners notice that neurodivergents do have like crazy abilities that
Absolutely.
are amazing. So
they can only work sustainably though if there's somewhat accommodation, or let's say if the challenges are taken into account, right?
Yeah.
Because I see, and that's really one of the things that I look back to, is that, for example, in the startup world, it's so full of neurodivergent people, but
Yes.
I would say mostly undiagnosed. But by how people act and how they are and how they work well and how they don't work well, based on what, like, it's very easy to see that it's like, I would say the startup and innovation field is driven by, very dominantly by neurodivergence. And yet, so the accommodation part is just not really taken into account. So I feel like a lot of companies kind of suck the talent into the company, but don't want to accommodate.
Yeah.
And then basically a lot of people just leave eventually, right? So once
Yeah.
especially once the pioneer phase is over, even in the startup world, you know, the neurodivergents are perceived as annoying or not structured enough, or I don't know, but just because, like, then, you know, you're supposed to be counting the P's, and I would say that at least for me is not my strength. So if it's just like processes and very dry work, then I basically crash, right?
Admin.
Oh my God, yes, exactly. So, but like, my point is that I feel it's almost scandalous in terms of what the expectations are from people who have a different skill and talent set. And you can't have just the cherries, you can't just pick those cherries and not give something to accommodate, which might be different from what you would give maybe a neurotypical employee. And that part really gets to me, it really bugs me. And I experienced a lot of it as someone who was leading teams, etc., that others were not able to see how to, I don't know, bring a neurodivergent. At the time, I didn't know myself I was neurodivergent, but I had a really good feeling for what other people needed. And when I always tried to accommodate, so I was really able to help people fly. And that's how I find you build successful companies. You empower the people. And I find that is very underestimated if you treat everyone the same way.
100%.
Like, I don't know, you have people who before were working in the corporate field and now they are trying to be a startup entrepreneur. And then they treat people like people were treated in a how to say, in a corporate environment, and that doesn't work.
No.
And that really pisses me off, because then I feel like there's a mismatch, and who is paying the price is usually the neurodivergent employees, who are supposed to be a certain way, and then eventually end up giving too much, which I also did.
Same.
And I saw so many people doing, and I don't know, I'm sad about it. Like, I see there's so much talent, so much potential, and so much struggle, which isn't necessary, right? It could be solved.
Yeah, and I think that what is also really important is to give neurodivergents the knowledge, the education to learn about themselves, about how the world works, and to set boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I also, and I think most neurodivergents can totally second that, you go into the company, you see someone that is performing low or is even malicious, and they get away with everything just because they do the rules of social performance, fake laughing, pretending to work but not actually working, visibility in the office, you know, those kind of things are not sustainable, and they are not actually the things that increase the revenue. So I think it's also like a lot of companies are still operating like from the 80s. You know, it's a
Absolutely.
relic from old times where conformity was important and where everyone had to adapt to the manager. But we preach since 15, 20 years that it's the manager that needs to adapt to different styles of people and working styles and stuff, which actually still hasn't happened yet. And I hope that we will eventually get there.
Yeah, it's like it reminds me of the medical field also, because I also feel like they're even maybe from the 60s and 70s or even before. But anyway, that's a different part. But let's see, we're not exactly living in the times in which that awareness is already mass knowledge, right? And like in this transition phase, and I feel like the boundary topic is one of the core topics for neurodivergence. I've always seen, including myself, overgive and overinvest and not really get enough in return, actually.
Yes.
And yeah, that's, I mean, it's how would I say, somewhat of a trauma response, right?
Yes.
If you're not meant to show, or you're not understood in your challenges, then you obviously are like, okay, something's wrong with me, so I need to suppress it. So I shouldn't demand anything. I shouldn't, I don't know.
This is also why a lot of
outspoken
abuse
about
is happening, you know, like in a lot of neurodivergence. I think it was 80% of autistic women reported that they have been sexually harassed and or abused. So I think it stems from the time of when you grow up as a child, that basically you get taught that you're wrong. Anything you do is wrong just because you communicate differently. And this is weird in itself, you know, that we cannot accept that everyone is just different.
Absolutely.
But
And then, I mean, I was always teased for all my challenges from, I don't know, I always I wear sunglasses a lot because I'm very sensitive to light. So I always sat in the dark meeting rooms because I needed quietness and I needed no light. And then people were coming in, they're like, why are you separating yourself? Why are you having the lights off? It's so dark in here. I cannot count the times I've been told, why are you sitting in the dark, right? You always with your sunglasses. So it just, there's so many things you continuously receive as feedback. I literally ended up feeling like there's something seriously wrong with me. Like I need to be as much suppressed as I possibly can be. And I mean, this seems to be such an overall pattern of people like us, how they grow up, and the more, let's say, marginalized you are. You were mentioning being a woman, which is often very different presentation when it comes to autism and ADHD. From, I don't know, for me, for being gay, for example, right? So you present differently and you have to suppress even more, right? And so the more you divert from the norm, I would say the more challenging it gets to live a normal life without the price being too high, right?
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you're married.
Yes,
Right.
now did you say why?
No. Right?
I'm married for, what is it now? 8 years, yeah.
8 years, wow.
Yeah. We met 9 years ago. Exactly. We met
Where
9
did
years
you
ago.
meet?
In Lisbon.
In Lisbon.
Yeah. At the time I left Berlin in 2016 and moved to Lisbon and lived there for 5 years. And during that time I met Bruno. Yeah.
Nice.
He moved the same month actually from Brazil to Lisbon, and I moved from Germany, from Berlin to Lisbon, and we met, and then a year later we married.
A year later.
Yeah, yes.
But it's beautiful. You just arrived in that city. You both didn't know the city very well, so you explored it together and probably also built life together there, right?
Yeah, very much so. Absolutely. I started the company that Bruno then entered. We bought an apartment. We traveled a lot, so it was really wonderful years. But then, I mean, not much later, COVID happened, right? So that changed our lives profoundly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lisbon was beautiful, and we've been married ever since, and are very happily married. He's autistic, so as you know, and so we've been on this journey of self-discovery ever since. 3 out of 4 of our parents in total have died over the course of the last years, which definitely set us off into the journey of, we want to understand who we are and who our parents were and how all of this fits together, right? So let's say life's challenges and different perceptions and diseases, and now it all makes sense, right? So it's been a hell of a journey, but with a lot of clarity that has been coming from it.
That's beautiful. I think clarity is so important just to understand, which is something very neurodivergent.
Absolutely.
We need a lot of clarity in understanding the big picture. And
Yeah.
so basically, you both have been assessed at the same time, or was there like
So
separate
Bruno
process?
was diagnosed with autism in 2022. And then eventually he approached me because he was in therapy, and he said to me, my therapist believes that you might be ADHD. And I was very upset. I was like, oh, what do you want?
Really?
Like, I was really annoyed because I knew I had challenges, but I felt like, oh, now it's like, is this about meds? That I take some meds so I'm normal and I'm finally like regulated or whatever? So I was very averse in the beginning. But so he was diagnosed, doing therapy, then kind of, obviously you talk about your partner also in therapy. So then this message reaches me that there is a suspicion of me being ADHD. I also had a colleague of mine, she saw all my tabs open on my computer, and she was like, oh, are you also ADHD? Because I had like 80 tabs open. I was like, what? Like, why? What's going on? So eventually, this led me to my diagnosis. I obviously had to wait a long time. So I got an ADHD diagnosis, and then about a year later, the autism diagnosis.
From the same doctor?
Different doctor, yeah.
Different
My doctor at the PUC, so the university clinic in Zurich, he had no clue about autism. And I'm almost appalled that this was missed. Generally, I mean, I talked about that when I'm at the traffic light, I think of how this all works and how this all kind of connects, and like does this change with the cars, like the frequency of the cars and whatever. I don't think that's so much ADHD. I would say it's more autism.
Yes.
Like to understand everything, like all the systems. I'm very interested in all these things. And I find there were so many hints that I gave that I even wonder sometimes if autism isn't my primary driver. But anyway, so a year later, it was also diagnosed. The autism part was diagnosed. But we've kind of been on this journey. So we're like 1 year apart on this journey together, which is extremely helpful, right? Because we can talk about it all day long, our revelations, how to deal with them. We also include, other people, obviously, in the self-help group that we have, all the way to AI to really connect the dots. And it's been fantastic, really. I'm profoundly thankful for Bruno, and including obviously this part of self-discovery and supporting each other in this journey.
That's beautiful, because it's like, it sounds a bit like you're kind of like partners, but also best friends.
Absolutely.
You can
very
talk
much
about
so.
everything.
Yes.
You have the same journey to go through.
Absolutely. And funny was also because in Lisbon, we next, it was like a side quest. We were always kind of buying and selling the place that we lived in, because you don't pay taxes in Portugal when you invest the money that you earn from one purchase, when you invest it directly into the next place that you move into. And we began seeing how we're so similar in our behavior, like when it comes to what triggers us in business, right? So doing these things together. So I was just basically going to add this business part also, because we both realized in the very beginning how similar we are when it comes to running a business. And I think that was the first part where we realized our common challenges, right? The impatience, the uncertainty that can be challenging, and how to deal with people. So I'm just injecting this point because this was like very revealing, I think that's kind of where our awareness started, how similar we are in terms of approaching life, which is so connected often to, most of the time, to making money, right? To just surviving in a way. Yeah.
Right. And when was when was the time you realized that you like men more than potentially women.
I mean, in retrospect, it's so easy to see. I would say 12, 13, probably.
Ah,
Yeah.
already, okay.
Already as a kid. I mean, I'm going to be very honest about it. I remember like moments where I was like, I don't know, it was some kind of book, biology book or something, and I was just really interested more in the male part. So I think you realize really early that this is that's what you prefer, but it's not like in this awareness of, oh, like I don't think we are meant to give ourselves labels, right?
100%.
But I could still feel, okay, there's more attraction in this direction, but let's say consciously I would say 12, 13. But I suppressed it until I was maybe like 17, 18, when you really like, I just couldn't suppress it anymore, basically. So I got really depressed because I was trying to be someone else. I was masking so hard. But I thought at the time, I realized that I'm gay when I was like 17, 18. But in retrospect, it's like I knew already 12, maybe latest at 12.
And how was that journey for you? Because that time it was, when was it? 1900?
So I was born 1980, so I was, yeah, so it was 1992. It was still in the, let's say it was against the law still even.
Really?
They were loosening up. I think they killed this paragraph in 94 or something like that, but
Okay.
I'm not 100% certain, but there was some kind of paragraph that was still in the, I don't know how you call it in English, Strafgesetzbuch. And yeah, so there was considered to be horrible. Like there were the only visible people were, let's say, drag queens and very outside the norm people. So very connected to being feminine, to liking, I don't know, skirts, handbags, and high heels. Nobody else was visible, so I had there was not a single role model that I had. And I thought, I'm not that. Like I like men, obviously, but I'm not, like I can't be gay then if this is what being gay looks like. So it was horrible. It was really, this is the only word to describe it. So much negativity around it, being gay, or like gay was a how to say, a curse word. And it was used like massively. So every day, like you'd hear it everywhere. And so it was all about hiding, right? And I think it increased the mask that I already had built to a large extent, because I've always been obviously neurodivergent. As soon as I entered school, I became masked in many ways, or adjusted / masked. And that then profoundly increased as soon as I realized there's an additional layer that I need to hide. Yeah, and that I explicitly need to hide, because that seemed the biggest danger, because that was so negatively connected to something horrible, right? So it's what I didn't want to be labeled as.
That's tough.
So eventually I had a lot of dark thoughts. So I really, like, death became my, the idea of committing suicide was definitely something that accompanied me for many years, because I thought at some point I'm just not going to be able to sustain my energy and this mask and this pretending. So which had luckily I made something positive out of it also, partially because I thought at some point I'm not going to be able to endure this anymore and bear this. So I thought, okay, so if I'm gonna, let's say I have a few more years, then I can just make the best of it, right? So I basically focused on, okay, I'm gonna do whatever I can now for the remaining time. So I'm gonna, I don't know, go a year abroad, do everything that that feels like I want to do it, that I want to test and learn. And so that was always my companion. It was like this, I'm not going to be able to endure this any longer, probably. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years maybe, and in that time I'm going to make the best out of it. So yeah, so it was kind of like it became my teacher and a driving force in many ways. But yeah, I still didn't know exactly who I was and what I wanted, what I needed. So it was a bit hard. So I couldn't find ultimate fulfillment, because I was still so extremely masked, right? And on the outside. So even if I was connected had quite a few friends and was accepted and but I always felt like this only exists because of the mask. If I show myself fully, I lose everything and everyone. And so it felt extremely lonely, and yeah, that was the journey throughout especially my teenage years. Yeah.
That's really hard, especially when you're so young and you just want to be and you just want to do life, you know?
Absolutely.
And I also think that
Excuse
this whole concept of like female, male, and all these labels, it doesn't really make sense, because at the end of the day, everything is nature, and we should be able to just express ourselves as we are. Because everyone has like differences, preferences, and whatnot, and telling people what they should be is so damaging, especially for children and for young adults that are on the journey of finding themselves. And yeah, especially during the time when you have been a young adult, I can imagine it was really, really hard going through that journey. And how did you? I would be interested in knowing, like, how did you open up about it at some point? How was that process for you?
I mean, it was pretty much because I got really depressed. Not officially, not diagnosed or anything, but at least my mother could tell that I was not well. And so she was expressing her concerns. Like, she was at one point saying, you know, what is going on? I need to know, really. There's something wrong. There's something that's not right, as in I can see you're suffering and I need to understand. But what came before was my best friend. I think it was 17, 18. He approached me once, and he in the evening, he said to me once, by the way, I have to tell you something. And he said, I'm gay. And I mean, what could have been my response? I mean, I wasn't going to say, oh, that's fine, I'm not, but it's okay, you know? So it kind of forced me out of my hiding. So I said, you know what, I am as well, right? So we probably knew it somehow from each other already, but when you suppress something so very much, then you don't even realize that. But that kind of broke the wall for me, right? The dam for both of us. And after that, it went pretty fast. So the next person I told was my mother. After we had come out to each other, you know, among friends. And after that, it went pretty fast. Yeah, then we really had almost like this competition. We were always like, okay, who did you tell now? Like every day was kind of telling it to someone else. And it was like this mega breaking free moment. And in that context, I also told my mother, which I found to be really hard, because I had this fear that they were gonna not accept it. What was a really healing, I mean, her response and my parents' response was fantastic, so all positive on that side. I was then really fearful about saying it out loud at boarding school. I went to a boarding school for the last couple of years. And obviously you're so like such a condensed or a dense environment. And I thought there was going to be negative reactions, especially because you live so closely together and you're divided into men and women, the wings of the school, basically. And there wasn't a single negative feedback. So that was really, really amazing.
That's
I would have never expected that to be that way. Yeah, so that was basically the story then. So in my last year of school, I came out to everyone, right? So to my family, to my friends, and I didn't make it a secret anymore privately, right? Professionally then, corporate, etc. I had to hide it for the first years, but yeah, so at least that part was covered, which was a major breaking free point. Yeah.
And you also talked about role models before. And this is exactly why I also find it so important that we talk about this, because people should never feel that they are alone, and representation matters.
Absolutely.
And I feel that I think the newer generation, like my sister's age, I have the feeling they're much more open and also like gender fluid, because I met men and women where they identify themselves as not wanting to commit to one gender, you know? some of them, they don't call it bisexual itself, but they just call it like nature, you know? They just do however they feel doing life. And this is like, I think the new generation, they will entire like break the whole like old systems and old cycles we went through.
Absolutely. And interestingly, which was nothing I had expected, is that I got a glimpse of that at boarding school. It wasn't as divided as you would think that it would be. So because you live so closely together, I would say there's a different dynamic somehow, and I experienced that there was more fluidity. And so I am convinced from the bottom of my heart that we as humans are, you know, it's like everything is a spectrum. So also this is a spectrum, right? And what is then eventually sexuality? Is it gay if you hug another man, maybe for more than 2 seconds? You know what I mean? And you know, with these labels and these clear roles that were assigned to each gender, I think we're cutting ourselves off from the fullness of life. Even I would go this far, right? Because I think we all want to be connected, and I find one of the main male pain points in being raised as a boy and as a man is this clear expectation how to be as a man, and that includes you have to be basically distant towards your gender peers, right? I saw women at boarding school, for example, way more like physical and like hugging and very emotionally supportive with each other. And for men and for the boys, although it was more at boarding school, still there were more hard lines, right? So you eventually are somehow raised to be a single fighter. And I find that's a really like a big mistake we're doing as a society. I think we would reach a much healthier world if we raised boys in a way that they're more connected with themselves and others. And I find especially with their peers in a non-performing way.
Yes.
Because I find it's like the male education is so much based on performance. And I think that fucks people up. And we see what happens, you know, when you are not really in tune with yourself and you, I don't know, run companies and countries, right? So
yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, looking at geopolitics right now, I mean, it's insane because I think this whole toxic masculinity is forcing men to suppress who they really are, the nuances they bring as human beings, which makes them dysregulated fucks. And then they just go crazy, what we see in our entire world right now.
And I would say, I would consider this a symptom, right? So as in, this is a symptom of who we are as a society, right? That then also people like that are elected into power, right? Not becoming dictators, like pulling, I don't know, in coups the power to them, but actually being elected into power. And so I find it speaks for itself that we have an issue in that regard, and there needs to be more focus. Like, I'm deeply convinced when it comes to that topic that we need to put the focus on raising healthier men.
Yes.
You know, so
yes.
And like what makes a healthy human being and man is a connection, an understanding of who you are, and a feeling of connection and a co-regulation ability, and not like competing for, I don't know, I'm the, I don't know, most handsome rooster in the pack, you know. So it's too primitive measured by
yes.
what we have as capability up here, you know.
But isn't that in our society that a lot of folks sometimes are pretty primitive because the thought process stops somewhere here, which makes it very complicated. I mean, just to give a holistic picture, like what I see right now is that our economy is not doing that well. So basically people are scared, people have doubts about what's happening, and we still have the narrative connected to toxic masculinity that the loudest and the proudest in the room has the power, and he will be the leader that will take us out of the misery. But this is wrong. But this is, I think, also why we're sitting here, because we humans, we do have the ability to take responsibility for ourselves and our decisions. But in order to do that, we need to learn to regulate ourselves. And I would say that the vast majority of people, especially in the Western world, are not regulated.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I mean, you go out and you sit in a tram and you just feel the energies of people like being moody or, I don't know, having like a rough day. And I'm just like, oh my God. I honestly, I don't know when was the last time I really had a throughout shitty day, because I feel that this regulation, what I learned towards for 2 years now, has led me to a point of just accepting certain things as they are, especially the ones that I cannot change. So anything that is outside of my control is something that I accept, but what is within my control is where I take action for myself, for my environment, and also in terms of impact on what I can do. So I think the regulation part in our society will most likely be key, so people can be their authentic selves.
Absolutely.
And just do life.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I for me, it really boils. I mean, it's not, I'm not claiming that this is the ultimate truth, but how I see it after what I've gone through in terms of this full unmasking journey, becoming aware of who I am, and seeing myself and the context in a different light. Right, I see that my suffering came from the disconnection that I had towards myself, and the according inability to be fully connected to the outside, because I was safeguarding myself from the threat, from the outside. Because in a competing world, you have to be someone, right? You cannot say or, be obviously sensitive, for example, especially not as a man, right? There's the expectation in the corporate culture, etc., that you are like, I mean, we see, I don't need to explain much, but you know what I mean, right? So, and it's kind of coming back even more than it was in the last, let's say, 10, 15 years. And I find in that context, when I look at my own journey, the disconnection that I had to live towards myself and my peers is a really deep wound that I've only begun healing. And I basically, for me, I mean, it's probably also for women often, but for me, basically, heterosexual men used to be a threat, right? So, because if they spotted me, who I was, they could, discard me or attack me or exclude me or whatever. So it's like literally connected to survival. If this is considered such a horrible thing, if you're gay, and then you're identified by another male, but like a heterosexual normal man, then you could lose everything basically, right? And I mean, this is so extreme, whereas in order for me to have grown up in a healthy way, I would have needed my peers, like my male peers also, to feel like there's a connection, there's not just competition, you know what I mean? Like that we can deal with each other in a way that is regulating, right? Because we connect and we can be with each other, not perceiving each other as threats. So I'm not perceiving a heterosexual man as a threat, and the heterosexual man is not perceiving me as a threat as a gay man, right? And I find that speaks so loudly in terms of what the implications are of that I'm not, let's put it that way, I'm not surprised about what the state of the world is. There's generally so much disconnection from nature, from one another, from oneself. So at the end of the day, I think it all boils down to our inability to act in a way that is community creating, basically, right? If we're always kind of competing with each other. And I see that women, luckily, that's also why I always, during my childhood and teenage years, I was way more connected to women, because there's more ability to be emotionally connected, like to be comforting, to hold each other, to hold space, etc. So, yeah.
And again, co-regulation, right, is so important, because I feel that we're humans. We're no different to animals. We have instincts. We we are nature. And we created a very fucked up Western world that is pushing you to always be productive, to always consume instead of create. And people are some sort of like nowadays still not seeing that. that this is unhealthy, that this is unsustainable. And I also feel that a lot of families are struggling with that because they don't see. They don't go beyond and try to find out why is it that they have like regular fights, or why they are dysregulated, why they are depressed, why they're anxious. Some people, I think they just still try to blind themselves or hide. And actually it could be, if we all pull on one string together as humans in society, it could be such a beautiful world.
Absolutely, very, very much so. And I think one of the main issues, if not the main issue, is that we believe, let's say, to take responsibility for it, that we as a species, society, or whatever, believe that there's one way of being, right? So for me, really, one of the key components, if not the key component, is that we're ignoring is that diversity and variance is nature. Like nature is variance, variance is nature. And if we exclude that and we say, hey, there's just one way of being, we all have to fit into that box, we create so much suffering through disconnection. Because, I mean, like, if I'm a bird and I'm supposed to be a penguin, like, I'm gonna like dive around in the water trying to be like a penguin, but I can't pull it off. I can't like slide through the water like they do. I'm just not made for that, right? And I suffocate and like, but you know, we're all birds, but there's different types of birds, like Luca always likes to say. And so in that regard, I find we need to allow this variance to exist and embrace it. I mean, kind of bringing it back to, you know, the topic of neurodivergence and being gay, etc. So like, if that had been accepted as part of who we are as animals/humans, you know, like, where would be the problem, right? We would have been growing up understanding ourselves as healthy and natural, and this is just, you know, there's different types of birds/humans, and that's that, right? But this feeling of needing to fit into a norm, that at least for me created the ultimate suffering, all the way to the point where I felt like I needed to kill myself because I just couldn't bear it, right? And how there's so many people that do, LGBT, autistic people, and neurodivergent people overall.
Yes.
Why are the suicide rates so high? Because you feel like you don't belong. You don't fit the box, so you don't belong. You're excluded. You're disconnected from yourself and the rest. And so I really hope, and overall, I think it's the hope that is my biggest hope, is that we embrace that diversity, and yeah, live with the natural understanding that this is the natural variance, and it's beautiful. And it's necessary for us to survive, even to go that far. Yeah.
Exactly. I also wanted to mention that diversity and that people are developing as different species, different humans, has also like gave us survival, because we had to adapt to different climates and different environments, etc. I think this is something from a biology perspective a lot of people don't take into account. And also in the animal world, there is gay animals, you know? And so I think that we have to foster this understanding in our society. And I was asking myself, like already a few times, sometimes generally, how people can sometimes carry so much hate. I was really trying to find out, and I will not always find the answers to everything. But I feel that people that are really hating on others, generally, they do hate themselves.
Yeah, and I totally interesting that you're saying that, because I also have come completely to the conclusion of, I only get triggered by what affects me personally, or what's in me personally. And it also, when people ask me in the past, or ask me nowadays, how do you identify if someone is gay or not? I can definitely tell you when a man is straight, although I don't like the labels anymore so much, but anyways, let's say more heterosexual, is they're secure in their sexuality, is that they don't have problems with me or anyone else who's gay or different genders, whatever, because they know who they are.
Yes.
But you can trigger people profoundly, other men, because obviously it's not a rarity that another man can be attracted to another man. It's not just if you're on that complete side of the, let's say, fully homosexual side of the spectrum. And then you get triggered because you're like, oh, this is something I actually trying to suppress. And so I think that, so to second your thought is, I am certain that this is the case, that we get triggered by what we feel inside of us, right? So we're actually kind of hating ourselves for that, for whatever that is. And I also feel like in this unmasking and healing journey, I experience myself being triggered less. Like I can let someone else's opinion stand that I would have thought was triggering maybe a few years ago. And so, yeah, I'm 100% convinced that what you said is the truth, in that sense of, if we find ourselves and embrace ourselves and who we are on all these different spectrums, I think there's no more feeling that we need to hate anyone or anything.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know if sometimes I feel like maybe I'm just then becoming like too, does this lead to ignorance then? Because I feel like I don't care so much anymore about other people's opinions. Do you know, I'm interested obviously, but like when it's negative energy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, am
yeah.
I going to end up being like a monk in the woods or something? I'm like, just do and feel whatever you want, lead your wars, and I'm embrace everything, But I don't know. Yeah, just a side thought.
No, I always say, like, you can do your wars without me. Just go ahead. I'm not hating on anyone. I'm not like participating in war. But I wanted to drop in with two of my ex-boyfriends, where I am 99% certain that they are gay. But because their environment, their friends, family dynamics don't let them, because of toxic masculinity structures, makes them violent. So I experienced domestic violence twice. And we have a hypothesis, my sister and I, because we talk a lot about men and toxic masculinity, also like in clubs when sometimes you just have hands somewhere, from guys who are like, what the fuck. We have the feeling that especially the men that are either like super violent or representing this toxic masculinity, they're trapped in structures where they cannot be themselves.
Absolutely, for sure.
Which is very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, whatever their like sides are that they feel, from sexuality to how their brains are wired, how their bodies are set up, right? For sure. I mean, I would say that's a human reflex, I think, is to compensate with aggression. The more insecure you are, the more prone you probably are to become violent. And yeah, and I think it probably concerns a lot, especially because on the sexuality side of things, I would say that the spectrum is major. I would say it's so much more common to also, as a man, have that feeling of you can be attracted to another man than we could. I mean, there's what was this guy called, Kinsey Scale or something like that. It's about like, it goes from like being fully heterosexual to fully homosexual and all the in between, basically, right? So it's very easy, if you're raised as a man, to be a very specific type of man, to be triggered by others who are more free than you, and who threaten your role or your, like, the way you're supposed to be a man. So yeah, I'm not surprised anymore where all of this comes from. I also feel pain in the sense of, now that things are kind of turning around in the way that men are generally looked at in, I would somehow say there's a tendency of let's say a negative perception, right? So it's a consequence of a behavior overall, obviously. But I would say it's also challenging for men nowadays to somehow navigate this new world, because they come from another time. Now things have changed so fast, genders, women becoming more confident, luckily. And so I think I wouldn't know, like, if I was a heterosexual guy nowadays that was raised in the 80s, 90s, how to be, almost, you know what I mean? Like, I was forced through my own journey to face myself to such a major extent that I could somehow by now heal to a certain extent from it. But I think if you weren't forced to do that, like, you really struggle now, because how do you manage this turnaround? Like, how do you find new orientation, although you were conditioned in such a weird, literally screwed up way almost, you know?
Especially within boomers. I'm just thinking about 2, 3 ex-bosses that I had that were like very sensitive, very caring, but they had wives and children and everything. But I feel like for them it's also extra hard because they created already this life with wife
my
and
God.
children. And
Yeah.
how
do you
would
change
that
that?
be for someone that is like turning 60, for example, to actually get out with that topic now, right, for themselves? I think that's a very tough journey.
Totally. And may it just be the part of being sensitive, for example. Like for me, I grew up as a man and I knew I cannot be sensitive, right? So I cannot show my sensitivity. I considered my sensitivity, which is very strong, as my biggest weakness, right? And that's a common perception among men. Not so much among the newer generation, younger generation, but let's say from my times and before, for sure. And my turnaround came when I started to embrace the fact that this is actually my biggest strength, because it makes me an excellent leader. I think I can lead people really well because I try to understand people and I think I can really connect with people. I can recognize people and what they need and who they are and what their goals are and like what I can give them so they are empowered. But among men overall, this is perceived as if you embrace your sensitivity, you're basically considered gay, right? Because sensitivity and being gay is like it's like one package supposedly, and that is
In
not the
narrow
truth.
minds.
Yeah. So and I think if as a man you don't grow up learning to live with that side of you, like how are you supposed to be like how are you supposed to have connection to that? You know what I mean? Like if that's the main thing that you're trying to avoid. And I think that leads to frustration, aggression, etc. Because you don't manage that. There's no way you can manage that side of you, you know? Like no learnings of any kind. And that's really strange. And I find that's like one of my biggest pain points, how long it took me to realize that that's a good thing, that I'm this sensitive. And therefore I was always more familiar and like felt more comfortable with women in my environment because there was a resonance on that side, right? But I would literally say men have the same way of the same depth of feeling, but there's just no access to it. And
Access denied by society.
yeah, and it's terrible. I really find it terrible. I find it fucked up. Like if you're raised to be a loner, and if you seek comfort, you can only do that with a woman, not with another man. You know. So then everybody's like, oh, I need a girlfriend, I need a wife, da da da. And then this woman is supposed to like be everything, right? But if there was also regulation among your peers, you know, what a present that would be. You know, what a help that would be.
I also think that a lot of famines that are increasing in numbers right now could be avoided. Because I also have a feeling, that's my pattern recognition, it's just a hypothesis and I don't have any research data on that, but I feel that a lot of them, because they have been not raised regulated, emotionally
100%.
Aware,
absolutely,
living their true life with authenticity, is making them so angry that they just literally kill their
100%.
partner. And honestly, I feel that we have a lot of mental health issues on this planet, but I think authenticity is key for people to stay healthy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And especially authenticity and sensitivity, right?
Yes.
As in showing and dealing with your emotions and finding resonance with it, because if you suppress all of that emotion, it builds up as a volcano. And for example, I find men it's my impression, I'm not saying this is the ultimate truth, but I would say men are in tendency more physical, right? So like there needs to be like, that's also why this, I don't know, from wrestling to sports to all of that's I don't know, it used to be, I don't know, wars and territorial things, who knows?
There's more muscles.
Yeah, so there's more need to be physical, but it's not really given so much, I find, like, and then you don't live that among each other than competition.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like then, like this is such a lack of regulation if you don't live that part, and it doesn't matter if you're gay or straight. Like you still have that. I'm still a man, you know. So I I feel that also, and I need that also, but you can't live that basically, right? Other than, I don't know, going to a boxing ring and smashing each other's heads, which is fine too, but there needs to be more ability to develop a healthy way of being physical before you're let out in the world, you know, and have a girlfriend and you know, create a family, right?
Yes.
Am I making sense?
Yeah,
Yeah?
100%,
Okay.
100%. I think what is also like a very good way of letting out anger, because we're all
Yeah.
angry, female, male, whatever we are, we have anger. And what I realized, I've done some energy work, which was really interesting, and which made me shed a lot of layers to become my true self. And I find 2 minutes a day of an anger practice, which is just taking a pillow, like a very not a soft pillow, but a
Yeah.
harder one, where you can just like, you know, it helps. You just
For
get it
sure.
out. And since I'm
Yeah.
doing it, I have the feeling I'm much more regulated
Yeah.
because I give it space. And
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
and it's fine. It's not that I want to go out and smash faces of people. Like, well, sometimes maybe, but it's like I feel that this anger practice can really help a lot of people to just give it
Yeah,
room.
absolutely, very
You
much
know?
so. And I think this, you're describing the core logic, right? So if you don't give it room, if you don't have the room to regulate, then, you know, you end up being screwed up and doing weird stuff, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, all the way
We can
to
see that in our
violence
world.
and drugs and all kinds of things.
100%. And if we maybe give some advice to our listeners, to the society out there, to parents, what would it be from your side?
I mean, I can only derive it from my own self and my own experiences, as in, I think all I would have needed more, and I think my parents actually did a pretty good job before I went to school, was to give me the space to be myself. And I would have needed that kind of support also beyond, like, you know, just being until you're 6 and at home primarily. So that means at school and later on in life. So overall, I think it's just the embrace of that we're all different, and we also might regulate differently, so that different needs are taken seriously enough, at least to be given the feeling that it's okay to be that way, right? And less norm expectation and more individual giving a room, and not neglecting these parts that might be different from their own expectations, right? And I had to learn that for myself to be able to give that to myself. I would say the sooner a child is given the opportunity to be themselves fully and be loved for that explicitly and confirmed in that the better, right? And
And
yeah.
in workplaces, what would have been your wish back in the days, entering the very first work experience, etc.? What would have made you feel more comfortable?
I mean, one thing that just popped into my head when you said this was, my therapist recently asked me, "What is it that you need?" And I almost thought this is the first time anyone's ever asked me that, you know? And it was almost moving, because I realized that somehow we don't really ask each other that, you know? And I think it would have just been that question, like, what do you need in order to perform at your best, you know? So that would be the question I would have liked to be asked, because it gives room to express what you need to be able to really give sustainably, right? For the price not be too high. I could have said, you know, I need my own office. Who cares? You know, like, if I have my own space where I don't have to turn the lights on and I don't know, wear my sunglasses, who cares? But I'm in quiet and I will go out and expose myself enough anyways. But I cannot work in an office where there's like 25 people in one little room and direct light from the top and noise and everything. I get overstimulated. So I really think the main question would have been nice to hear is, what is it that you need? Like this support in try to find accommodations, especially for people like us, in my opinion, who are willing to give so much, you know, and we don't really ask for much in return. But yeah, the little things would have made a huge difference. And for me, it's basically primarily the ability to withdraw and recharge, and work in my energy spikes versus consistently throughout the day like everybody else, basically.
Yeah, but consistency is also a little bit of a myth or a misconception, because no one is productive for 8 hours.
Yeah,
No,
that's for sure.
absolutely not.
Absolutely.
Usually we say by average 4 hours. So that's why I'm also not a big fan of enforcing visibility, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make you more productive. It just gives the ego petting boss basically more control. But at the end of the day, it's bullshit. It's garbage. But I feel that I was always advocating for nap rooms. I find it important
I like
that
that.
after you had like the lunch, you know, to lay down for 10, 15 minutes should be absolutely acceptable. And we're humans. Again, and the 8 hours came from the industrial times in the 60s, where you have been working on machines doing repetitive work, which makes sense. But if you have this high complexity nowadays, it just, you know, the whole system, it doesn't really work anymore.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're going to probably have to, now in this new revolution that's taking place work-wise with AI, etc., we're probably going to have to focus way more on identifying who we are and what we can sustainably give,
Yes.
and what it needs to do that than ever before, right?
Yes.
So I think we're maybe time is in our favor. The developments are I would think they are in our favor, and people like us, like for people like us, but I don't know.
No, absolutely. I agree. I think the next years to come will be our years, because we have so many complex problems that we can
Absolutely.
only fight with complex solutions.
Needs complex brains.
Exactly. So we join intelligent forces and we'll fix it together.
We can save the world.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much, Wolfgang.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. And we'll put the information in the show notes as well. And thank you so much for being with me.
Thanks again.